Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me today. Today I have a really fun card doing probably the easiest galaxy background that I have ever done, and I will be using products from Ink Blot Shop. I am guest designing for them this month, and so I am using some of the really cute products. The first product that I'm using, or the stamps that I'm using, is called Winging It, and then these words right here are called Spaced Out Greetings. And so I've already gone ahead and I've colored up the images that I think I'm going to use. I changed this up a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and include this part still. So there is this little jar in the stamp set, and I wanted the greetings to be in the jar. So I stamped this jar up on some vellum. I inked it up with some VersaFine black, and then covered that in some clear embossing powder, just because that VersaFine black would never have stayed because the surface is non-porous. And so to seal that in, I went ahead and added some clear embossing powder and then heat set that. And then what I wanted to do was to make it look like the words were inside of the jar. And so I've gone ahead and stamped those up, and I am just adding a little bit of adhesive and gluing all of the words in the jar. And then I'll go ahead and add this piece of vellum over. I'm trying to be careful just to put the glue on that little black strip of where the outline was stamped, but a little goes over, but you cannot see it through the vellum. And so I'll go ahead and adhere that right over that jar piece. And unfortunately, this jar does not make it on this card, but I went ahead and I saved it for a future card. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to creating my background. So I am using the 6x6 Starry Sparkle background stamp, and I've already prepped my card panel with my anti-static bag, and I am using Bristol Smooth cardstock for this. I will be using a decent amount of water. Bristol Smooth is one of my favorite papers to use. It doesn't have kind of the texture of a watercolor paper, but a lot of times it can take a decent amount of water, and you'll see that when I start doing my background. And so I just went ahead and inked up the stamp with the Versamark ink, and I will be adding some white embossing powder. And so I'll go ahead and when I do my embossing powder, I always like to go over it 2 times. And so I will grab my little tweezer, since the image is from side to side all over the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and put that embossing powder on, and then I'll put it on again just to make sure. And then I will take my heat tool and heat this up. And then I'm going to create a border around my card. And to do this, tape actually works 2 ways. It works by holding the paper down when I add the water that I'm going to add, as well as adding a little bit of a border. This is just painter's tape. It is really awesome for not sticking to the paper, and I think the fact that this is embossed helps as well. But then I went ahead and took my water bottle and I sprayed the panel first, and then I'm using my Ken Oliver inks. There are so many products that you can use for this. There's lots of different powders out there, and you can even use just plain watercolors. But I thought these were really fun. I love the colors. They're nice and vibrant. And so I'm just kind of sprinkling them around with the idea in mind that this is going to be a galaxy background. And so I sprinkle my lighter colors on the main portion, and then I'm going to do kind of the night sky to make it look more like a galaxy. So I'm using a darker blue, and I'll go ahead and spread that just around the outside and then wet that down. And then I'm also going to use, I believe it is Wisteria. It's really kind of a dark pink purple color, and it mixes with the blue really well, just to kind of set that color off even more and to give a little bit more of definition to the night sky. But this was so fun to do and quite easy, way easier than a bunch of ink blending. So it was super fun. And then to kind of get the lines to move, or the black color to move a little bit into the color to kind of give even more of that effect of the galaxy night, I did go ahead and take my heat tool and push a little bit of that color into different spaces to give that really pretty effect. But I went ahead and I stepped away and let this dry for probably a couple hours just to make sure it was dry. And then I'm going to pull the tape off. And I think the best way to pull any tape off of a surface, no matter what kind of tape you're using, is to basically fold it back on itself and just pull it really slowly across. And really, painter's tape is all around multi-purpose tape in the craft room. I think I get so enamored with all the other tapes that basically do the same thing, but this is, I think, probably a little more cost efficient, so I don't know why I don't use it more often, but it's a great tape to have. And so I luckily did fairly well with not having any of that color bleed underneath the tape, or not very much that's noticeable. But I went ahead and I sprinkled this with a little bit of watered down white ink. And then I added some double-sided adhesive, and then I'm also, for some extra stability, adding a little bit of liquid glue. So I really messed up this card right here. So I'm rubbing my hands across it, and I ended up getting a little bit of that ink smudged, and then I went in with a wet wipe, and then I tried to fix it, and I actually made it a bit worse. So I knew I was going to have to hide that area. So to do that, I went ahead and I grabbed a die from my stash. It's kind of like some forest trees. I added a white embossed sentiment from the stamp set, and that's going to cover up that bottom portion. I'm not sure why. I've never had that really happen before. I don't know if it's because I just added that splatter and it was wet, or if it was that sometimes when you use the powders, you can get a little bit of dry powder that doesn't fully get wet. And so you can kind of feel it on the card, the dry powder. So it might have been that as well. But needless to say, I fixed it as best as I could. There is a little bit that's not as noticeable on around the edges of the card as well, but I just tried not to stress about it. And then I'm going to add my little bugs, and since I had some left over from my original plan, I went ahead and added that to the inside of the card as well. And like I said, I just took that little jar and I will use that for another time. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked this video or found it informative, I would love a thumbs up. This was super fun to make. I hope, if you haven't done it already, that you give it a try. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.